He put a doll in the car to trick the traffic jam. In the end, he tricked his whole life and himself too. The carpool lane. Steve got up early, but always later than he meant to. Alarm rattled at 6, he dragged it out 20 more. Mirror showed a man with tired eyes and a fresh cut on his chin. Breakfast, 1 toast, 1 coffee. Habit, not joy. By 7, he sat in his gray sedan, reliable but no soul. Neighbors joked, car as gray as its owner. He never argued. Same road every day, cars locked like they'd been chained together. Drivers scrolling phones, chewing donuts, cursing. To his right, the carpool lane, wide open, mocking. Steve stared at it, felt the sting of envy. Minivans full of kids, coworkers car-sharing, families. Beside him nothing, not just empty, loud in its emptiness. That morning he stopped at a roadside coffee stand. Barista slid him a cup. Foam or hope? Neither today, he said without thinking. Only outside did he notice the date on the receipt, the gray sky. Barista's words clung like a stranger's voice in an empty room. Neighbor Mrs. Kramer passed while he unlocked his car. She looked at him too long, nodded short. Steve nodded back, but it felt off, like she knew. On the highway the jam crawled. Steve muttered, eyes on the passenger seat. So how long we sit in here? He froze, the we slipped out too natural. He smirked, but the laugh was hollow. Office was the usual reports, tasteless coffee, talk of baseball. Steve looked out the window. All he saw was that lane on the right, the world he wasn't in. Evening, he drove back, sunset bled red over the dash. The empty seat pulled at his gaze. He shrugged, whispered, "Guess you could use some company." Dry laugh, but the thought buckled in like a seatbelt, and it wouldn't unclick. Steve waited a few days, thought about the seat more than about work, felt like someone was already sitting there. One night he gave in. The store was far from his neighborhood. Sign said adult fun, between a car wash and a pawn shop. Letters peeled, windows smoked. Inside smelled of cheap rubber and strawberry air freshener. Shelves sagged with things Steve didn't want to name. "Look in for a passenger," raspy voice. Steve jumped. Clerk stood there, tall, skinny, hair long, badge read Edgar. His voice was theatrical, like he'd practiced. "Something like a mannequin," Steve muttered. Edgar smirked, dragged out a big box. On the cover, a blonde with painted eyes. "People always need company," Edgar said, "even if it's rubber. Truth is, she'll keep quieter than a wife and cost less than a lawyer." Steve reached for his wallet. Edgar still held the box. "Tell you what, I'll throw in glasses and a knit cap, make her look respectable. But the bag'll cost you $1. Professorina bag, let's call it." Steve sighed. "Fine." Edgar leaned closer, dropped his voice. "Real problem ain't Bane alone. It's when neighbors start noticin' the empty seat." Box finally in his hands, Steve bolted, but Edgar's words stuck like glue. Home, he opened the package, pump hissed. Slowly the body filled with air, shape rising on the couch. Steve laughed, nervous but free. Dressed her in an old sweater, pulled the cap down, slipped on sunglasses, buckled the belt, click, like christening a passenger. Glasses tilted a bit off-center, almost human. Morning, he drove her out. Car slid into the carpool lane. Steve's pulse hammered. In the rear view, himself and the wife, sitting calm. No one stopped him. Left lane frozen. He sailed. Office arrival 30 minutes early. Colleague squinted. "Look who's chipper today." Steve shrugged. Chipper was putting it mild. His veins buzzed. Evening, he tried again. Same result. No one stopped him. Steve caught himself whispering to her. "See, told ya it'd work." She kept quiet, but the silence felt like agreement, louder than Edgar's words. Third week, cracks showed. Morning looked normal. Steve buckled her in, fixed the cap, straightened the shades. On his keys, a plastic hospital bracelet he'd found at the drugstore. Random name, random date, made the act feel real. Highway opened, carpool lane clear, Steve humming, then flash, red and blue in the mirror, heart fell. Officer walked up slow, heavy, face worn, eyes bored, badge red hill. Mornin', long pause, know why I pulled ya? Steve's throat scraped. No, sir. Hill leaned in, stared at the passenger. Too long, way too long. Body cam sees all, he said flat, best speak plain. Steve's palms wet, words broke out on their own. She's my wife, sick, I drive her to clinic. Pause, Hill's gaze stayed on her, he finally nodded. Rough deal, well go on then, careful now. Knocked the roof with his knuckles, stepped back. Steve drove off shaking, lungs on fire, relief twisted into heat. Legend worked. He tested it, at the pharmacy lot, guard waved him off. Steve held up the keys, bracelet swinging. Wife's waiting, she's not well. Guard's face softened, park here. At the supermarket, cashier cut the line when he whispered. She can't stand long. Of course, honey, she said, eyes on the bracelet. Each time Steve felt the jolt, like an actor nailing a scene. The crowd believed, pity tasted like power. Neighbors picked it up quick. On the porch, Mrs. Kramer asked quiet. How's Linda? Steve blinked, muttered. Bad, some days better, some worse. We pray, she said, nodded, walked off. That night Steve sat in the car, eyes on the doll. You saved me, he whispered. One slip and I was done. She stayed silent, silence louder than Hill's aha. Rumors ran faster than dogs off leash. Linda Johnson became gospel on the block. Steve didn't add details, folks painted their own. Mrs. Kramer turned nurse, showed up mornings with cures. One day, shredded potato and cheesecloth. Draws sickness out through the feet. Next day, bottle of water, cross on the cap. Bless, 3 drops, 3:33, nighttime only. Steve nodded, stuffed it in the closet. By evening, more gifts on the porch, prayer leaflets, candles, diet tips. Sometimes she lingered. Added Linda to our prayer chain, 200 strong, hope that's fine. Sure, let M. Even kids played along. Little Timmy stared through the car window at the doll. She don't blink, he said, dead serious. Steve froze. Pause. My mom too sometimes, Timmy added, then bolted off. At the grocery store, a folding stand appeared, fundraiser for Linda Johnson. No photo, just a flower clip art. Slogan, cash back to health. QR code taped crooked. Neighbors lined up for selfies. Steve saw his own last name printed bold for the first time. Basket in hand, he stood there cold, story no longer his. It had legs, walked on its own. That night Kramer waited again, pot of soup in hand. Hot meals help, Linda'll rest easier. Mom, Steve muttered. Tomorrow I'll pop in, check her pillows, got spares. Better not, she's weak. Right, I'll just stand at the door. Door shut, Steve sat, hands on his face. Neighbors were writing the chapters now, he only nodded. But the chill inside kept growing. Every prayer, every dollar, every casserole another brick, wall rising fast, ready to fall right on him. At work, the story was both shield and knife. Steve used sick wife like a key, day off for tests, prime parking. Bank clerk let him skip a payment after he flashed the hospital band on his keys. A few plays, enough to taste power. Then came Debbie, new hire, clipboard girl, questions nobody wants. Over coffee. Funny, she said, nobody's ever seen your wife. Steve shrugged. She's shy, stays home, sickly. Ma'am, her stare lingered too long. Week later, her voice behind a door. Saw a dash cam upload at the light, not a person sitting there. What then? Asked a coworker. A plastic inflatable. Laughter short, sharp when Steve walked in silence, but eyes stuck to him like burrs. Soon the boss called him in, HR waiting, small room, blinds shut. We value you, Steve, the boss began, soft. So you're firing me. Pause, pencil scratch the desk. Value takes many forms. HR slid a folder across, grainy photo inside. His gray sedan, him at the wheel, passenger in glasses and knit hat, skin shiny, face wrong. That's my wife, Steve muttered. Wife of vinyl, the boss asked. Pause, think about the company image. No one smiled, no one spoke, only the folder between them heavy as stone. He signed, paper read termination by mutual agreement. In the hall, whispers cut off mid-word, someone coughed. He carried the folder like a guilty verdict. That night at home, he stared at the doll in the seat, not a partner anymore, an exhibit, silence thicker than any police report. It started quiet, office called an all-hands, room set like court. White screen, rows of chairs, projector humming. First slide, his sedan, passenger seat filled, plastic face staring. HR woman cleared her throat, boss tapped a pencil on the table, scratch, scratch, louder than words. We value your work, Steve, he said. So you're cutting me loose. Pause. Value comes in many shapes. Papers stacked one after another, discrepancies, fraudulent signatures, intentional entries. Wilkins, the outside auditor, spoke flat, like reading a weather report. And here's the sweetest line, he added, not smiling, unscheduled generosity from the state. The room stayed silent, each page hit the table like a bullet. Steve's head rang. They called in Steven, quiet guy from the next desk. Ceramic frogs, tuna sandwiches. He sat straight, hands folded. A lunchbox dented on the table before him. Didn't say a word, only looked up once. Eyes hollow. That was worse than all the accusations. 2 days later, the cops showed. Knock at dawn, paper in hand. We got a warrant for seizure, one said. For what? Steve croaked. Cop glanced at the passenger seat. For the missus, corner of his mouth twitched. Second one coughed, hiding a laugh. They bagged the doll, plastic arms folded, head tilted, zipped into clear wrap like evidence. Car door slammed, tires crunched off. Fines rolled in after, tickets dated for every ride in the carpool lane, page after page, like snow piling overnight. Bank slip, zero balance. He stared at that number longer than he ever stared at a living face. That evening he sat in the dark, doll gone, job gone, only the empty seat remained, glaring. It was as silent as the first day, but now silence didn't mock him, it sentenced him. Weeks slid by, Steve stopped counting. Days gray, edges blurred. He walked now, bags of discount groceries biting into his hands. Cars roared past, carpool lane wide open, mocking. One evening he stopped outside a thrift store. Behind smeared glass sat the doll. Same cap, same crooked glasses, skin sagged, tag underneath, discounted. His own reflection lay over hers, flesh and plastic, couldn't tell which face was emptier. He almost laughed, almost spit, didn't. Next day the window was bare, doll gone. Answer came quick, evening rush, carpool lane humming. A gray minivan slid by fast. Behind the wheel, Mrs. Kramer, calm, steady hands on the wheel. In the passenger seat, cap tilted, glasses shining, Linda. Steve froze on the curb, heard it, the click of her seatbelt through the glass. Same sound as his weeks ago. The loop closed tight. Later he went back to the coffee shop. Same one, same counter. Barista smiled, held up a cup. Foam or hope? Steve stared. Outside, Mrs. Kramer's van slid past, Doll's blank eyes catching the morning light. He walked out with an empty cup. Pavement under him felt thin, brittle. Cars howled by, free lane still wide, still mocking, but it belonged to someone else now. A plastic keychain cracked in his fist. He squeezed until it snapped. Silence pressed in loud, louder than laughter, louder than the word we, the one he'd once used for an empty seat.